Hello and welcome. My name is Marley Gillies, and I'm the Vice President External here at the University of Calgary Students' Union. On behalf of the Students' Union, I'd like to welcome all the candidates in attendance. Thank you for being here today, as well as a warm welcome to all the staff, students, faculty, alumni, and the community who are joining us on our live stream. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 region here in southern Alberta, as well as the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, the Stoney Nakoda, as well as the Chiniki and Bearspaw and Wesley First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Our concerns as students range from transit access, voting accessibility, employment, and ensuring we regain a vibrant downtown core for our city. Tonight, we expect a lively and spirited forum as the candidates discuss their platform priorities and answer questions about the issues that are important to students and all Calgarians. The race for mayor is a very busy one, and our stage is only so big. 9 candidates vying for the office of mayor were invited and have joined us tonight. The decision was made exclusively by the SU and its organizing committee. We encourage students and Calgarians to read up on all the platforms and inform themselves before casting their vote on October 18th. Before I introduce our moderator, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the candidates joining us this afternoon. In alphabetical order, we have Jan Damery, Jeff Davison, Jeromy Farkas, Brad Field, Jyoti Gondek, Zach Hartley, Zane Novak, Teddy Ogbonna, and Shaoli Wang. Thank you so much for joining us. Finally, I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for tonight's forum. Rob Brown is the host of CBC Calgary News at 6. Rob was born and raised on the West Coast, but his journalism came of age in Alberta. Rob has a passion for politics and has spent more than 20 years working as a reporter and an anchor. I'm thrilled to welcome him to tonight's forum as our moderator.
Thank you, Marley, and thanks to everyone for attending today and tuning in wherever you might be joining us from. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's great that the Students' Union can put this thing on, because it's not an easy thing to do in these times, as you can all imagine, right? It's complicated. Years past, these forums, you just collect some people in a room and you let them go. Now we're standing up here with masks and little sanitizers that look like felt pens that are so confusing, but it is quite a feat. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this forum. Welcome to our mayoral candidates, all 9 of you. Really pleased to see you here today. I'm really happy to be joining you on behalf of CBC Calgary to moderate this forum hosted by the University of Calgary Students' Union. Yeah, they put it together under very difficult circumstances to ensure that students here at the U of C and all Calgarians can get a more complete picture of who these folks are and why they want to lead our city. And there's much to be said for that, as we just saw throughout the federal. Again, I want to underline that the candidate selection was handled by the organizers of this event. CBC News had nothing to do with it. I encourage all voters to look into all candidates before they cast their ballots. Okay, let's get to some housekeeping first, for the benefit of those at home in particular, and then we'll get into it. I want to talk about the format first. Candidates are going to make opening remarks in a response to an opening question, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer that opening question as part of their opening remarks. After those remarks, we're going to move into the debate section. A total of 9 questions will be posed. For each question, 3 candidates have been randomly selected to answer, and they're going to have 90 seconds to do so. So 9 questions, each question, 3 candidates. Now, if another candidate wants to respond to that question, each candidate has been provided 3 tokens. Mr. Davison, you want to show us what one of those tokens looks like?
Yeah, if I haven't lost them already.
It's a metaphor for politics.
There we go.
Poker chips, folks. They're all rolling the dice. They're all gambling with their careers. So they'll be able to redeem those poker chips 3 times. They have 3 of them, right? So if somebody's been asked a question, one of the 3 takes a question. Everybody else has a chance to get in on that question if they choose to. So carefully decide when you decide to play those tokens, when you decide to redeem those poker chips, because we're not going to go back. We're not going to revisit questions after the fact. And we do want to hear from you on the questions that you feel most passionately about. If at any time during a response, we hear a direct critique of another candidate's position or policies, that candidate will have the option to provide a 30-second response for rebuttal. This will be at my discretion. Next, the rules here. We want you to respect the clock. So you can't see it at home, but we have a digital timer in front of the candidates to help them respond within the time allotted. Again, 90 seconds per response. And we want to make sure that each candidate has the opportunity to answer the questions in the equal amount of time. So I would ask everybody, please deliver your statements and responses in the time provided. If talking past your time becomes a continuous problem, I'm going to pull the old broadcast trick. I'm going to pull down your mic. I'm going to ask the audio board fellow we have up to our left here to kill your mic at the 90-second mark going forward. So you're on notice. Please try to hit that 90-second mark. I don't want to have to do that. Make it easy for the audience to listen. Don't interrupt each other, okay? Stay issues focused. Please do avoid any direct personal comments or attacks. We want to hear you on the positions that are before you today. We don't want to hear things get ugly. To put a really fine point on it, we will not tolerate any kind of abusive language of any kind. You'll be asked to leave if it gets ugly. Masks on, obviously, unless you're speaking, as you're seeing from here. The candidates will be called on when it's their turn to come forward and speak, one person at a time, safely distanced from the others so they can remove their mask and then put it back on before returning to their seat. All right, that's it. We got several themes, as Marley already touched on today, important themes facing the city. We've got economic recovery. It's a big one, right? The property tax problem, that's tied into it. The future of transit, increasing voter participation among young people. We want to see more young people get out and vote. That little thing called the climate crisis. Yeah, that's a big one. It's on the list today, and leadership. And that's where we're going to start with this question going to all of you as you present your opening remarks. While the mayor is, of course, the visible leader of Calgary, they only have 1 vote on council, meaning in order to see a vision realized, a mayor has to build consensus. That comes down to leadership. So in your opening remarks, as you explained to us a little bit about your professional background, why you want to lead the city, we would ask you to please explain exactly how you would get enough councillors on side to see your vision for our city become a reality. We're going to start closest to me, work across the stage in alphabetical order, which means, Jan Damery, the floor is yours for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Rob. Hello, everyone. I'll take my mask off. That makes it easier. I'm Jan Damery. I'm running for mayor. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you to the U of C and the Students' Union for organizing this. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being here. And I'm so excited to be on this stage tonight because one of the reasons I'm running for mayor is the belief in the future of our city and being an attraction for young people to stay and build their lives. I'm Jan Damery. I'm running for mayor, really out of a sense of huge gratitude because of the opportunities I have been afforded, both personally and professionally. I arrived in this city in 1990, and it was a time of great opportunity. It's about me paying back and paying forward. I have a 24-year-old stepson who left the city a year ago because he could not find a job and did not see opportunity here. We need to come together, and we need leadership that can bring us together, to pull us together, that we have opportunities and generate opportunities for all. And it's going to take fresh perspective and actual leadership that can pull people together. I'm an economist, I'm a business leader, I'm a community leader, and most importantly, I'm a coalition builder. I've had to do this across all organizations I've worked in all 3 sectors I've worked in complex organizations. It is about setting a vision, having a playbook, being willing to change your own position for the greater good. This is the unique skill that I have. And I believe that together, I can and we can bring together, we can generate 80,000 new jobs in our city. We can make Calgary the place to be, to live, learn, work, and play. We can take action on climate change, and we can restore the heart and soul of our community by ensuring that everyone is included in our recovery, especially our young people. That's about removing barriers to accessibility, to employment, and to also ensure those that are settling new in our city. I'm Jan Damery. I'm running for mayor, and a vote for me is a vote for the future of this city. Thanks so much.
Right to time, Ms. Damery has set a good tone for the debate going forward. All right. Jeff Davison, you're up next. And could I ask the fella sitting right in front of the clock to do me a favor and just scooch over a bit so I can see those numbers? That's you. Yeah, if I can't see the clock, we're in trouble here. A bit to your right.
Stage
And
right, left right.
That's right.
Which right?
Thank you. All right, let's start the clock for Mr. Davison. Go ahead. The
Well,
floor is
thanks very much, and thanks to the U of C for hosting, and thanks to all the post-secondary students across our city who are watching this. I know this just isn't about U of C. We've got Mount Royal, SAIT, Bow Valley folks watching, and so thank you for everything you're doing. I'm Jeff Davison, and I'm running for mayor. Why? Because I want this to be a thriving, dynamic, and affordable city for everyone, and I'm focused on the future. The future is you. The future is my kids, and we've all chosen to be here in Calgary. And I want to make sure people continue to have opportunity here. Calgary used to be a city of open doors and open opportunity for everyone, and we have to work hard to get that back. And that's what I plan to do. And I plan to do that by continuing to do the job I have been doing for 4 years. You know, past behavior is a good indication of future behavior. And experience in this election is going to matter if we're going to hit the ground running. It's why I have attracted a record amount of technology companies to come to Calgary. It's why we're trying to fill up that downtown. It's why we're trying to make the downtown safer. But overall, if I want more companies coming here, we have to find things to do. It's why I'm investing in the new entertainment and cultural district, the Arts Commons transformation, the event center. Things to do in our downtown matter. Giving people a reason to want to be in Calgary instead of need to be in Calgary. You know, for me, all I can say is I am focused on the future, not just you, but all the next generations. We have a significant opportunity in front of us to look at how we're going to move forward in Energy 2.0, agriculture, fintech. The opportunities are endless, but we have to get to work. I've met with the experts, I've done the job, I have the experience to take Calgary forward. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. My name is Jeff Davison, and I'm running to be your next mayor.
Mr. Davison, thank you. Up next, Jeromy Farkas.
Great. Thank you so much for the incredible opportunity to come home to the University of Calgary. This is my alma mater for many years. I went to school here as well as worked as a research team lead in the Faculty of Medicine. For me, I'm here because I'm asking Calgarians to embrace opportunity. I'm asking City Council to say yes to issues around financial responsibility, to transparency, and to safety and security. For my family, when they escaped communist Hungary as refugees, they could have gone anywhere in the world, but they chose to come to Canada, they chose to come to Alberta, and they chose to come to Calgary. I grew up in East Calgary and Dover. I have a proven record of never forgetting where I came from. I put my principles first, often when it's been financially costly. For example, by turning down the golden pension that's been available to city councillors. I believe that we need to reform how the city approaches our budgets. We need to do more with the same or even more with less, like a lot of families and businesses have been forced to. I think we need to address transparency and the closed-door meetings at City Council. I believe that it's an embarrassment that City Council spends more time in these closed-door meetings than practically any other major city in Canada. I also strongly advocate for support for police funding. I believe that this defund and abolish the police ideology is quite reckless, and I think it's putting Calgarians' safety and security at risk. I believe that we need to have a downtown police station. Our city is now the only major city without a downtown police station, at the same time as the safe consumption services were opened up in the Beltline. So through my time on council, I have a proven track record of asking City Council to say yes. Yes to financial responsibility, yes to transparency, and yes to opportunity. And as far as the question in terms of my leadership style, on major issues important to students, things like restoring the summer student hiring program, advocacy for the low-income transit pass, advocacy for mental health and addictions funding, I've been able to advocate and secure the votes needed. So my name is Jeromy Farkas. I'm asking to be your next mayor.
Mr. Farkas, thank you. Up next, Brad Field.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you again to the U of C for organizing this wonderful event. I am Brad Field. I'm running for mayor. I'm super excited about the opportunity to lead this city. I want Calgary to be a world-class city. I have a confident plan and vision for a Calgary where people will want to live, work, raise their families, and grow within the city of Calgary. My top 3 priorities: job creation and the economy. We have to recreate that environment where jobs and businesses flourish again here in the city of Calgary. Every Calgarian deserves the opportunity to thrive and prosper here in Calgary. Strong collaborative leadership. That's my natural leadership style. That's what's missing in council right now. It's time for a change, and I am that change. Delivering affordable, good quality services to all Calgarians. We often hear that people are very happy with the services, frontline services here in Calgary, but what they're not happy with, what they're concerned about, is the value they pay for these services. As students that are soon to be graduating, I understand the need and the confidence around having a job after post-secondary education. We have to rebuild the environment here in the city of Calgary, create an inviting environment for businesses to thrive. Because when businesses thrive, they grow, and when they grow, they hire more talent. I want to create a world-class environment for arts and culture with world-class facilities for arts, culture, entertainment, sporting events. I want to formalize Brewery Row and Music Row in downtown Calgary by streamlining the permitting process and relaxing noise bylaws. And most of all, I want to hear from you. If we're talking about the future of Calgary, we have to talk about that next generation. Instead of just an election cycle, we want you a part of the future. Thank you very much. I'm Brad Field. I'm running for mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Jyoti Gondek, the floor is yours. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much to the U of C Students' Union for organizing this safe forum. We are facing social and economic uncertainty in our young city's history, the likes of which we have never seen. And if we want to continue to attract investment, to welcome and retain talent, and to make sure that we reestablish our economic advantage, we're going to have to be incredibly intentional in our plans. I have been committed to championing investments in public transit, neighborhood amenities, and housing affordability to ensure all of you can have a strong quality of life. I've taken the time to listen to students and to young professionals to ensure that I'm properly advocating for your needs around things like secondary suites, a better alternative to the U-Pass, access to a robust and affordable education, and access to employment. It's taken my experience and persistent leadership on council to foster change at City Hall, to ensure that our administration understands how important it is to work with students to plan the future of our city. And the next 4 years at City Hall are going to require a steady hand and a team that really focuses in on our citizenry. And to your point about what will we do to create consensus and team building at council, it requires leadership that is humble and compassionate. What I wish to do with my colleagues is encourage everyone to thrive, to let people shine and to let them lead, and then recognize people for their accomplishments. That's how a leader builds a team. Make sure your people are able to do the work they wish to do for the betterment of our city. I'm Jyoti Gondek. I'm looking for your support for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Up next, Zach Hartley.
Hello, Calgary. My name is Zach Hartley. I'm 27 years old. I'm a graduate from Mount Royal University, and I currently run several successful businesses here in the city. I am running for mayor because I don't like how our tax dollars are being spent right now. The number one example of this is the Green Line Transit project. It's going to cost us $5.5 billion, and at the end of the project, after 6 years, it's going to connect our downtown core to the Shepherd landfill. I think we would get much better use and ROI on that investment by connecting our international airport just like every other major city. It would also be a nice addition to the BMO expansion and the new arena that we're building. It would facilitate more trade shows and more business travel. My second point about my platform is that we need to drastically reduce our property tax. The previous city council and many of the council members up here on the stage have done a terrible job of diversifying our revenue streams and alleviating the burden on Calgary citizens and small businesses. We continue to raise the property taxes, and it is not the solution moving forward. In order to solve this problem, I plan to add a new tax to profitable, large, foreign corporations. So if your company is based outside of Canada, you have over 5,000 employees, and you're currently profitable, we are going to add an additional tax, and that money is going to go to reducing property tax in the city. I plan to lead by example. To directly answer your question, I plan to lead by example. If elected, I will donate 50% of my salary every single month to local Calgary charities and nonprofits, and I personally challenge all of the other candidates on stage here to meet that same pledge. The salaries and the pensions of City Hall have gone way too high, and we need to bring them back down to reality. So if you are looking for a candidate that is not happy with the status quo, that wants to make a change in the culture, and that wants to shake things up, my name is Zach Hartley. I'm running for mayor on October 18th, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. We're next going to hear from Zane Novak.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today to the U of C and also the Students' Union. Yes, my name is Zane Novak, and I am running for mayor. I have a background in business, both small and large, but I also have a history in the not-for-profit sector. During my time here in the last 19 years in Calgary, I've donated approximately 23,000 volunteer hours to our nonprofit sector, everything from serving meals to being on board positions. That has also brought me in contact with City Hall, and I've seen the inefficiencies, the divisiveness, the disengagements for stakeholders, and the fact that we have a City Hall that now is not leading us in any particular direction, and we as Calgarians are losing. I have a platform that is based and built on specifics, not just platitudes, introducing things like gain share, managed competition, biannual review of projects to make sure that we're on time and on budget. I have received awards from the city on behalf of charities such as the Western Legacy Award, the Calgary Legacy Award. This proves my dedication to community, but it also brings a balance between fiscal responsibility in business and what our at-risk communities have and need. It's that balance that will help me to be a wise and dependable leader and mayor of this city. And one of the things this city needs more than anything else really is collaborative leadership. We see our City Hall is so divisive. We need to work together to make wins. We need to work with our stakeholders. We need to respect our stakeholders, whether those are taxpayers, our provincial government, our federal government. This is something our current City Hall is failing at. And we as Calgarians pay the price. So I'm Zane Novak. I'm running to be mayor of your city, and I will work hard to do that, but I can only do it by listening to the voters, the stakeholders, taking your expressions, your desires, and your dreams forward. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. All right, and then there were two. Up next, Teddy Ogbonna.
Thank you very much, the Student Union. Thanks, Rob, for bringing me back to my alumni. So it's quite refreshing. First of all, as you all know, I'm an immigrant. I wasn't born here. But I've been privileged in my life to travel around the world. I'm a development consultant. I've done consulting and worked with the US government, British government, and the Canadian government when CEDA used to be. But from a not-for-profit perspective, and I did my internship at the City of Toronto for 2 years before I moved out here in 2008. And I would like to say this, that this city is a world-class city. Calgary is a classic city. We can't get anything better than this. It's God's own city. One of the reasons why I'm running for this election is based on my lived experience. I've worked in every sector of industry in this world. I've been in the oil and gas. I've done security, janitorial. I've owned a business in this city, had employees. I've observed city councils since 2008 in their council. And one of the things I have seen is that we are spending way too much. There are so much contingencies at the City Hall. And that's why my campaign is offering a 10% cap, taxes, across the board from homeowners and businesses. And one huge thing that I'm doing as well is to bring a lot of young folks, the millennials, the Gen Zs, university students, to be part of the decision-making process at the City Hall. And I'm instituting a shadow youth cabinet. This city belongs to young folks. The future of this city lies in you. How you want to shape the city of Calgary lies in the young folks, the students in this city. 5.5% of you guys last year left this city after graduation. It's jaw-dropping. We are losing engineers and architects. So I'm bringing you guys back to City Hall. It's not going to be business as usual in this city under this administration. And what I'm asking you is your support and vote. My name is Ogbonna, running to be your next mayor of this great city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. And finally, opening remarks from Shaoli Wang.
Property tax hike is the reason we got 27 mayoral candidates. What is the magnitude of a property tax hike? Between 2003 and 2019, inflation was 32%, but a municipal residential property tax increased 129%. Per business, that's per capita. Per business, municipal property tax increased 103%. While our provincial per capita property tax increased 35%. Where did our over-taxation go? Between 2011 and 2019, compared with 2003, municipal property tax over inflation and over population growth accumulated 4.6 billion, while cities over inflation and population growth salary accumulated 4.8 billion. With the 4 times of inflation property tax hike, snow shoveling issue stays intact. Garbage collecting was halved to bi-weekly. When our mayor commented he was not that worried about 11% of residents failed to pay property tax, I take the owners, their personal worries about our 11% residents and our thousands of struggling businesses to run for your cheapest mayor, with the commitment to cut business property tax 26%, resident property tax 23.5%. My name is Shaoli Wang. I'm a geologist and back home, the office owner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wang, and thank you to all of our candidates. Those of you at home may not realize it. Yeah, go ahead, give yourself a little round of applause. Well done. They all hit their time. I work off a clock every day with commercials to hit. That is not easy to do, so well done. Let's see if you can keep it up. Appetizers out of the way. Let's dig into the mains. Again, 3 candidates have been selected at random for each question. If another candidate wants to answer after those 3 have spoken, they must redeem a token. Each has 3 tokens to do so. All answers 90 seconds in length. The first question is going to Mr. Wang, Mr. Farkas, and Ms. Gondek in that order. As we've seen throughout the pandemic, the debate over the future of the Green Line or supervised consumption sites in our city, the provincial government's policy and funding decisions can have a pretty profound impact on Calgary. We also know that the relationship between the current mayor and the premier is not a healthy one. So as mayor, how would you go about building and maintaining a good working relationship with the premier? Mr. Wang, it's over to you. You have 90 seconds once you reach your mark.
Excuse me? Can I ask you to clarify the question again?
How would you build a healthy relationship with the premier as mayor of Calgary?
So it's not about Greenland.
You can weave Green Line in there if you like it. It was an example of sometimes the province not being on the same page as council. but how would you as mayor build a healthy relationship with the person leading the Alberta government?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would like to start with the Green Line. The Green Line is a hot topic between our provincial government and our municipal government for a couple of years. My position to the Green Line is a firm no. We can't afford that in 2019. We can't afford that in 2020. We can't afford that in 2021. We are deeply in a dual crisis. Our government promised to offer their fundings. That is fine. But I read a 9-page letter to our Minister McIver now to push that forward because we can't afford that. The Green Line first stage will cost $7.65 billion at best. And the total Green Line will cost over $13 billion and $300 million. We can't afford that. And then there's a fair deal. We have that. Provincial against to the federal, and our city to the province. But what I say is we send 29.4% of our property tax to the province in 2019, 2020.
Okay, Mr. Wang, you are at time. Thank you for that. I will remind you that we will get to the Green Line at one point here, that the question pertains to the relationship between the mayor and the premier and how you would go about building and maintaining that. Mr. Farkas, the floor is yours. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And just like any other relationship, it needs to be productive. I think a healthy relationship requires on the mayor of Calgary to give credit where it's due, to work together collaboratively, but not necessarily to always have the default to be opposition. There's a lot of areas where we can and we must work together to be able to secure Calgary's future. Things around, say, flood mitigation, around housing, around mental health and addiction, health, many other jurisdictions. But I think the current approach where it seems like no matter what, City Council opposes what the provincial government does, I think that it's selling short Calgary's strategic interests. Previous mayors like Al Doer, Mayor Bronconnier, they were incredibly effective at being selective in terms of their priorities. They made very clear that they were elected on behalf of Calgarians. They stood up when the issues warranted it, but they also gave credit where it was due, and they were willing to support the provincial government in the areas that they did get it right. So when we think about, say, significant major infrastructure projects like Green Line, things like this will only be built with the participation from the federal and the provincial government. So it's very essential that we row in the same direction and we work collaboratively with them. But I think I have a proven record of supporting the province at times when I think they get it right, but also standing up to them when they've mismanaged certain issues. For example, I've stood up on behalf of council to be advocating for them to revisit their coal policy, revisit their cuts to affordable housing. But again, the question is it has to be strategic and selective rather than just fighting all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Ms. Gondek, the floor is yours.
It is absolutely a fact that municipal governments and provincial governments should be able to get along and work together in the interest of their citizenry, and that's happened in the past. Why isn't it happening now? Because this premier and this particular provincial government has no interest in doing so. You can try to be a good partner all you want to. We have reached out many times to many ministries and to the premier himself. They have chosen not to engage. It is impossible to build a partnership with a partner that doesn't wish to come to the table. And it is not in the best interest of Calgarians to sit back and wait for them to do the right thing. They have not done it for the pandemic. They have cut police budgets. They have cut money to social services in our city. We have to advocate for Calgarians. That's the job we were elected to do. And if you are stuck with a partner who doesn't know how to govern, sitting back and waiting for collaboration is not the answer. You must push for more. You must push for better. The reason we are now actually dealing with pandemic mitigation is because we didn't sit back and wait. We demanded more. That's how you get what you need from a partner, not by sitting patiently, by asking for what you need and pushing until you get it, because that's why Calgarians elected you to be in that position. A mayor needs to work with a premier, but a premier needs to understand that it's a two-way street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Okay, right. Put up your hand. We have two in front of you. Mr. Ogbonna's first, then Ms. Damery, and then Mr. Davison. So, Mr. Ogbonna, please come to the center mark. And yeah, I'll just remind you, throw your hands up. I'll take note of it. I'll write it down so we don't have to worry about interrupting anybody potentially. Yeah, I've got a pen. Thank you, though. All right. Mr. Ogbonna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rob. As the next mayor, come October 18, 2021, my life, I've built a lot of consensus. I'm a low-key consensus builder. I've done a lot of stuff with world leaders in Washington and in Manhattan at the UN level. I've watched the city council here since 2008. I moved over to this great city. I think we have the same problem at the city hall. It's not about saying no to everything that you want to council is voting on. That's not leadership. You got to find the balance to build consensus and lead among councillors. Setting the right tone is very important in politics. And the definition of consensus could be different from what you understand as lay people, but politically, there's a political response to so many things. And I have that lived experience behind the scenes. And I would consult with both provincial government and federal government to make a case with the right experts to make sure that they see the reason why Calgarians need whatever we are looking out for. And I think it's all about building relationship and setting the right tone in conversations in politics. It's going to be more productive, and we're going to see the outcome here, but Calgary first. That's the most important thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. Ms. Damery, you're up next. I'll just remind you again, you answer the question however you feel you want to, but the question itself is, as mayor, how would you go about building and maintaining a good working relationship with the Premier in particular? Ms. Damery.
Thanks so much. Fundamental. It's about relationship building and being able to actually set aside your own view to find the common ground and then build towards that collective will. I've been asked many times when elected mayor what my first ask and demand of Jason Kenney would be. It's actually a meeting to get to understand what's motivating him. It's not enough to say that a partner won't come to a table. We have to understand why he's not coming to the table. Because I believe that a successful Calgary, a prosperous Calgary is actually in the interest of both Jason Kenney and this province. So it's about building relationships, having that common vision. We're leaving too much on the table. Our green line, because of the fighting that this council has had, on the green line has already increased and escalated because of inflation, almost $300 million on the price of that project. We are leaving affordable housing dollars on the table because we can't get along and work with the province and the federal to bring rapid housing initiative dollars to the table. We're not even playing nice in the whole realm of childcare with this current federal government that has just been re-elected as a minority. Childcare is fundamental to women and families in our city, and it's an economic lever for us to come back. So as mayor, it is about building, being able to actually find that common ground, pulling. And this is something that I have done all my career, working internationally in business and not-for-profit, brokering very complex deals. It's always about have curiosity and ask the question, what's a win for all of us?
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to take that comment about it's not enough to say someone won't come to the table, a partner won't come to the table as a direct shot at Ms. Gondek. So I'll give you 30 seconds to respond, should you choose to. If not, we're going to Mr. Davison.
Never say no to an extra 30 seconds. I think it's wonderful when people who aren't in an elected position make comments about what you should do. I'm actually in that seat. I have tried to build these relationships. My colleagues have tried to build these relationships. This premier and this provincial government is simply not interested. What are his motivations for not coming to the table? I have no clue, because he won't talk to us. So it's nice to make suggestions from the outside. I'm actually living it.
Okay, we're going to leave that there. I get the sense it could go on for a while, Mr. Davidson. You're going to be the last speaker on this topic. You have 90 seconds, and again, this is about maintaining and building a good working relationship with the Premier. Go ahead.
Well, relationships are tricky, right? But it's not about the left, it's not about the extreme right. What it's about is Calgarians and making sure that you put your best foot forward to bring partners to the table and share the win. And so again, if past behavior is any indication of future behavior when it comes to the film sector, I couldn't stand up the film sector here in Calgary and bring a record amount of Hollywood production here without the provincial incentive fixed. We worked really hard with the province to fix that. You know, when it comes to technology and driving new investment in our city and filling up the downtown, the province is right there with us. They set the provincial corporate tax rates that some of these businesses care about, so they need to share the win. Now, we can disagree on a lot of things. We disagree on healthcare right now. We disagree on Green Line. The challenge is that you don't always have to agree, but you have to find the path forward. And I believe on all the projects I've worked on with the province, agnostic of what the subject is, we found that path and we got it done. And that's what I'm all about, getting things done for Calgarians. It's not about opinions, it's about projects finished.
Thank you, Mr. Davison. All right, we're off to a good start. Next question is going to Mr. Novak, Mr. Hartley, and Mr. Davison again. Perhaps the most urgent issue that will be facing the new mayor and council is how to get the economic engine that is the downtown core off life support. Obviously, a significant presence downtown is important to the U of C with both the 10th and 10th campus and the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape in the public library. But downtown has been hollowed out in recent years, as we all know. A recent report is predicting that the commercial vacancy rate is on track to top 30%, potentially reaching, I had to read this twice in my research, potentially reaching a level unseen in a major North American city since the 1930s. The city has a revitalization strategy. The province is working on one too. We're asking, what is your strategy to address this issue? Mr. Novak, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Yes, this is certainly one of the most challenging things facing Calgary right now. We have a huge vacancy rate. In fact, it's even higher than I've taken consideration that many businesses have long-term lease space, laid off people. We need to build vibrancy at street level. Calgary used to be that community that everybody came to because there was opportunity. But there isn't that anymore between taxation, obstacles, difficulty for permitting. We have chased business away. We're losing 15 businesses net a day. It is my plan to build vibrancy at street level and not invest $1 billion into refurbishing buildings when we already have lots of unrented condo space that's already been built. We can do this by building at street level, building vibrancy, promoting arts, promoting traffic from 17th Ave to Riverwalk. If you go to my website, you'll see my visions for Stephen Ave, 17th Ave, Riverwalk. We also want to champion and make sure that Calgary is known not only in Canada but North America as an entrepreneurial hub of opportunity. But we can only do that if we directly attack regulation and taxation. Those are the two biggest obstacles to startup businesses. I have specific plans about that, how to create efficiencies, reduce costs, and champion businesses to start here. And that's going to help our university students transferring out of their educational pursuits directly into prosperous jobs to build their futures and their careers.
Mr. Novak, thank you. That is time. All right, Mr. Hartley, let's hear your specific plan to address the revitalization of the downtown core, please.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I like Mr. Novak's idea about building up at street level, but unfortunately that just does nothing to solve the problem of the vacancy in the downtown core. And that vacancy is one of the major reasons that we have seen higher and increased property taxes over the last few years. So I like the idea, but I think we need a whole lot more than that. My solution and my plan for this is to incentivize home builders and developers to convert the unused office space in the downtown core into affordable housing where university students, anybody with a lower income, or anybody that just can't afford the nice high-end apartments, they can live there, and we can incentivize our builders and our developers to convert that unused office space into successful, affordable housing. This helps us tackle both of those problems. This is a major issue because in Calgary, the ability to find adequate rent with transportation that can get you to your job is extremely, extremely difficult. And so if we can fill in those empty office spaces downtown, we can increase the value of those properties, which will generate more property tax for the city, and it will lower the burden on the small businesses and the other residential homeowners within the city. So my plan is to incentivize and put in place programs to make developers and home builders convert unused office space into affordable housing so that we can solve our affordable housing crisis in Canada, in Calgary here. We can increase the value of those properties, and we can also lower the tax burden on the majority of small business owners and residential homeowners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartley. Thanks to everybody so far for staying close to time. We're ticking along. Yeah, Mr. Davison, you're up next. What is your plan when it comes to addressing the commercial vacancy rate downtown and how to get it back up and running?
Well, you know, I think when it comes to the downtown, there's obviously lots of opinions on how we're going to fix the downtown. For me, I've talked to the experts, I've built the plan, it's time to get it done. And we're focused on really on 4 pillars: business environment and setting the right taxation to attract businesses downtown and take advantage of all that open space. We've got to talk about placemaking and why we're investing in things like the entertainment district and the entertainment cultural district. That's going to have things to do. People want things to do beyond 5 p.m. if they're going to be in the downtown core. We're going to focus on innovation, because innovation is the key. Sectors around decarbonization, sectors around agricultural growth. Those are 2 good examples of where Calgary can go in the future. And then talent. Talent's the #1 thing, and that's where you folks come in. It's partnering with our post-secondary institutions to figure out what do you want in your downtown? What types of jobs can we attract that put you to work, that keep you here and want to be in Calgary? You know, the only way the downtown is going to be successful is if our economic strategy is successful. That means we've got to get the private sector, the public sector, all levels of government, and the post-secondary institutions working together to achieve the same goal. I always say it's important that we can all drive in our own car on the highway, but we've got to agree we're going to the same place. That's how we're going to get focused on fixing the downtown, and it's going to come through a major economic drive.
Thanks, Mr. Davison. Okay, I have 2 candidates who've wished to redeem tokens, so that's 2 more. Anybody else? 3rd. All right, Mr. Field, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no question we have a downtown vacancy rate challenge, but current council has put forward a $200 million expenditure into the downtown core around revitalization. One of the line items I'm curious about is a single line item of an additional $10 million to hire additional staff within the city of Calgary to oversee downtown revitalization. That's a clear sign of more spending, bad spending habits. But more importantly, I want to get the youth living in the downtown core. Every time I engage with that next generation, they're talking about living, educating, working in the downtown core, partying in the downtown core. So let's talk about that. And then when it comes to attracting new businesses, I listen to city council currently right now, and they'll stand on a mountaintop and talk about we're open for business. They're telling the globe that we're open for business. But in actual fact, we're not open for business. I'm a business owner here in Calgary as well as in the United States. I'm here to tell you that we are closed for business because of the regulatory risk, because of the bureaucracy, because of property taxes. We need to change that narrative where we can truly back up our words with actions and be open for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Ms. Damery, you're up next on the question of how to revitalize the downtown core.
Thanks so much. You'll see an incredibly detailed plan and idea about changing our downtown into a neighborhood. And the key driver in that is actually working with our amazing tech ecosystem and our post-secondaries, both formal and informal, to actually scale our tech campus that currently is there and other post-secondaries. So we have 4,000 students living and learning and working downtown. It's about, that also creates an amazing ecosystem actually for startups and this innovation. It's about actually repurposing that empty square footage. Think about how easy it is to do if we actually have learning space and how we connect. And so this is the opportunity. It's also about revitalizing the cityscape. We have one walkable street downtown. We have not invested over the years in Main Street. And this is about revitalizing arts and entertainment. I know that I am so pro-infrastructure, the event center, the BMO expansion, as well as the Arts Common, because we actually have to put the cool back into Calgary. Another fun idea in my platform is we can actually put a surf park on the Bow River, start using our natural assets to put the cool back into Calgary that also attract and want people and employers to actually have students and people and entrepreneurs living and working downtown. So again, please check it out. And it's about not increasing tax dollars to do that. It's using how we use and renovated East Village. We can do the same thing downtown.
All right, that's time. Thanks, Ms. Damery. Ms. Gondek, surf on over to the square center stage, please. Yeah, the token. I'm keeping track.
So the most important thing about investment is when you make a capital investment that you're drawing matching funds from other sources. So the capital that we've invested into our downtown strategy, which was recommended by multiple stakeholders, has now attracted capital from the private sector. And we have federal and provincial interest in generating more services downtown. And that's the problem that downtown had in the past. We created a place where only offices were located. Great downtowns allow you to have a great life there. We need people to be able to live there, to drop their kids off at school, to take your dog to the local dog park. We did not allow for all of those things as a regulator. So when you are the regulator as a city government, you have to get out of your own way. We need to allow our downtown to be a place that people can do all of the things within their daily routine. That's the job of your local government. Once you do that, you make it attractive for people to do those conversions to residential. You make it attractive for businesses to say, I can take that vacant space and do something different in it. As the local government, we first must change zoning and allow for a complete life downtown so that it can become vibrant once again. Thank you.
Thank you. That's time. Mr. Farkas, you're up next. Revitalization of the downtown core is the question.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity to ask many businesses why they choose not to operate in the downtown. And resoundingly, it's been safety, security, and affordability. Firstly, safety. I believe that this election is about change versus more of the same. Continuing to defund our essential services, our police services, has caused safety to compound a lot of the vacancy issues that we're facing in the downtown. So I'm advocating for a downtown police station as a way to show confidence in this as a neighborhood just like any other. Next, in terms of security, we need to make sure that investments that occur in the downtown are secure in the event of another flood. We need to continue to be advocating for upstream flood mitigation to ensure that the investment that's deployed there is safe. Next, around affordability, I'm proposing a 4-year property tax freeze to give downtown businesses the certainty that they need to be able to project out their costs. Next, I'm advocating for a taxpayer bill of rights to be able to reform our assessment system to again give those same businesses the certainty that they need. And I think Council's direction to, begin to sell off inner city parks, beginning with a portion of Richmond Green Park, has set a troubling precedent. I think that we need to preserve, we need to conserve, and we need to expand our park system. We need to advocate for needed services like the Beltline Pool, Inglewood Pool, Eau Claire YMCA, and many others. Another piece is around support for creative industries, educational institutions. But most of all, Calgary City Council needs to get out of the way so that the talent and the investment can choose our downtown.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Okay, Mr. Ogbonna, you are the final token to be redeemed on this topic. The city has a revitalization strategy for the downtown core. The province too. What is your strategy?
Thanks, Rob. First of all, I've gone through the whole resilience strategy, and I totally agree that we need to innovate every aspect of our economy, even looking at the report we had, the last city report. But here is the deal. I'm not a fan of revitalization. I believe this is classic. For some of you who knows how politically the current council here, you cannot tell a landlord in downtown core what to do with his or her space. I worked last in a real estate investment trust firm. I've seen how big oil companies and financial companies shrink from 10, 15 floors all the way down to 2, 3 floors and sublease, lead people employment. So here is the deal here. I strongly believe we need to change our tax policy, and that's why I'm proposing to have a 10% cap for 4 good years I've been in office for homeowners and businesses. And I think we should begin to draw. Of course, we all know that anything about huge capital investments in the city has to come with the two levels of government above the municipal, provincial, and federal government. So we've got to set the right tone, begin to negotiate, work with private sectors and public sectors as well. There are alternative sources of funding we could look into in making sure we draw huge investments here to create a more vibrant city. It is vibrant, but a more vibrant and creative city to make sure most of the young folks stay here after graduation, and that's the focus of this campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. Do stay there for me, because as per our random draw, you're up next, along with Mr. Field after you and Ms. Damery. And the question is this: the current vision for the downtown includes a new event center, replacing the Saddle Dome, of course, and all the development that could come along with it. But the project is already over budget, and construction hasn't even started. So, Mr. Ogbonna, if the owners of the Flames asked the city for more public funding, would you consider that request? 90 seconds.
The answer is no. They got what they wanted in the last deal. It was a closed-door thing. King got what he wanted. It was not fair, in my own opinion, but legally we all know that that deal is closed. If they're coming to ask for it, we'll nicely ask them to look for alternative source of funding. I'm a huge fan of Flames, but I do not support having a tax burden. We're already going through a whole lot due to tax hikes by current council in so many ways. It's way through the roof. That's why I'm proposing to cap things at 10%, homeowners and businesses. So that investment is done. We're going to look at different ways. Unfortunately, here in this city, everything is about government funding. I was on a webinar yesterday with the Calgary Economic Development, and it's surprising. The city is paying almost 76%, pretty much 80% supporting that organization. And I asked them a simple question: can they sustain their projects and initiative without government funding? And of course, Brad said no. I understand. I've been into development, but the critical questions in development these days is, how would you sustain that entity or that initiative if the funds dries up? That's what I was driving at. They cannot continue to rely on the city of Calgary. We have no budget. We are going through a looming shortfall of close to $500 million, and we can save a lot by cutting salaries and wages at the city of Calgary. Employees, top city managers are earning way too much. The city council have so much bonuses. We need to cut down on those things, and that's one of the things I'm proposing to do in the first 100 days in office. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. Mr. Field, you're up next. If the owners of the Flames asked the city for more public funding for the event center, would you consider the request?
First of all, I'm a big supporter of the entertainment district. I think it's vital if we're talking about a world-class city. We have to have world-class facilities, and the entertainment district is a part of that. My real question and concern is about, one, the price increase already. Yes, I understand that there's been construction cost increases and material costs, but these secret backroom deals. I have a close contact with Calgary Sports and Entertainment, and I phoned hoping that I could get some insider information on what was going on, and they wouldn't even release it to me as a friend. So I got to really wonder, when we're spending the amount of money of taxpayers' dollars, why we can't know what's going on. So for them to come back and potentially ask us for more money, I would say I'm open to discussion, but we got to have transparency around this discussion. So I'm in a big supporter position of the entertainment district, but we need to have transparency around this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Damery, you're up next. 90 seconds on the question of more public funding for the event center.
Thanks very much. I am pro entertainment district as well. This is about getting the cool back into Calgary, ensuring that we have world-class infrastructure that draws people here, keeps them here, particularly our young kids. With regard to the current deal in the arena, it is a great deal because it actually sheds the risk of any cost overruns actually to the private partner. You don't see this in many other North American arena deals, so actually the deal is a great deal. The issue now is to build it within scope. I'm one of those individuals that is running for mayor that actually has built infrastructure in our city, on time, on budget. The YWCA, multi-million-dollar project in Inglewood, and also in my pipeline days. So we actually have to have, in terms of protecting the public interest, that our dollars actually get the returns long-term that we need to get out of this facility. And that's what I'm going to have my eye on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any tokens to be redeemed? Mr. Hartley, you're up, and Mr. Davison, you're after him.
Yeah, so this question is, if they ask us for more money, what are we going to do? Well, the really simple answer is we're not going to leave a half-built building sitting in our downtown core. So the answer is going to be yes. Now, the real challenge here is having the right people in management to make the right deal. And very clearly, we don't have that in our city council right now. If we are building a project and we are building a building that is going to be the focal point of the city, it is going to get built. And if it goes over budget, they are going to pay for it. We're going to front the money, but they're going to pay for it in the form of royalties, on ticket sales, on rentals, on concessions. And we are going to make sure that the city of Calgary is not laying out that money and never getting it back. We are going to make a very healthy interest rate on it. We're going to lend that money out. We are going to make the city of Calgary an entertainment hub for the entire world of North America. And we are going to change things things up. But it comes down to having the right people in place when things go wrong. Things are going to go wrong, especially on a project of that size. And so what we need is level-headed politicians that aren't playing tit for tat, you get this, I get that. We need to find a way to make sure that this project works for the city of Calgary and the citizens within Calgary. If it goes over budget, that's no problem. We're going to finish the project, but we are also going to charge them a royalty, an interest rate, whatever it may be that works best for both parties. We are not going to leave the construction unfinished. We are going to build this, but we're going to make sure it is done in the best interest of Calgary citizens. And if you vote for me on October 18th, I will be that person to get the deal done.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Mr. Davison, over to you on the question of more public funding, potentially, for the already over budget event center.
I feel like I shouldn't have to use a token on this one because I think the rebuttal to the question is effectively there are no cost overruns. The Flames take all of the cost overruns. That was well reported in the last deal. That's why it's a great deal. If they want to choose to put gold bathrooms in, go right ahead. It's your cost. At the end of the day, it terrifies me knowing that this is my project, what everybody thinks they would have done. Projects of this size and scope require certainty, security, and trust with partners. And a lot of the conversations that we have here about secret backroom meetings and different things, no, it's called negotiations. And anybody who's been in business before understands how this goes. You know, the Flames not only take all the cost overruns on this, we own the building. We own the land it's on. The building actually pays for itself. The opportunity here is that we move from just 44 hockey games a year and a couple of concerts to programming that could be upwards of 320 days a year. Now that's something significant with a building. The opportunity, though, is in how we build a tax base around the building. So not just bringing concerts and more hockey to this, how do we build a district around it? And that's what we're really after, the full development of the entertainment and cultural district, where we now have over $2 billion worth of private sector interest to build on lands that are currently home to some of the world's least impressive parking lots. That's how you build tax base. That's how you capitalize on opportunity, and that's how you involve the private sector. But if you continue to slag them and you continue to call it corrupt and backroom, you will never have the opportunity to draw partners to Calgary again.
Mr. Davison, thank you. Mr. Field, I'm sure you sense that that secret backroom meeting line was aimed at you. You have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Again, I am supporter of the Arts and Entertainment District 100%, and to Jeff's point, it will be a game changer for the city of Calgary. However, we continue to claim that he's the only one responsible for this. I very rarely hear "we" out of Mr. Davison's mouth, so it is a team effort. We have to hold people accountable for that. We're not shovels even in the ground yet, and we're already claiming that the deal's done.
Okay, thank you. Any more tokens to be redeemed on that topic? All right, let's move it along. Next question goes to Mr. Farkas, Ms. Damery, and Mr. Novak. In recent years, Council has spent more than $200 million in property tax rebates to help relieve the burden that is shifted to smaller businesses because of the lost revenue from those vacancies downtown. Last year, Council voted to shift some of the business property tax load to residential property owners. So as Mayor, Mr. Farkas, would you be in favor of residential property taxes being increased? And if not, please be specific in how you would plan to make up the lost revenue.
No, it's not fair. It is absolutely unfair to be asking struggling seniors, families, students to be asking them to pay even more during this time. I know that Council felt justified in increasing taxes by, say, about 7.5% last year during the height of the first wave of COVID, but that's reckless and I think it's irresponsible. I think Council needs to live within its means. We need to be able to do more with the same or even more with less, just like a lot of other Calgarians have. You know what, I've led by example. I've seen things like the golden pension available to city councillors. I chose to turn that down, not to grandstand, but to actually make a point that we need to be able to reform our own compensation. We need to be able to address salaries, wages, benefits, and overtime at the city. If we can't do that if we don't do that for ourselves, and we're accepting all the automatic pay raises. So I'd like to see us holding the line on that expense area. I think that we can continue to be able to hold our budget flat and continue to invest in needed things like police services, essential services, and so on. And another piece is around the tremendous amount of reserves that are available. When you have posted significant surpluses, tens of millions of dollars, or even more than $100 $400 million in a single year, that shows one point: the taxes are too high. But this current narrative of pitting homeowners against businesses, it's the exact wrong question to ask. It should be holding mayor and city council accountable for their spending decisions rather than tossing a hot potato around.
Mr. Farkas, thank you. Ms. Damery, you're up again. The question, would you be in favor of residential property taxes being increased? If not, please be specific on how you plan to make up the lost revenue.
Thanks so much. We've got to actually, and I actually agree with Jeromy, we can't actually pit residences against businesses. And we've actually got a profound, complex problem that actually this current council has kicked down the road for far too long. And so we actually have to commit to renegotiate with the province, actually fair and equitable property tax base. But in terms of the next number of years, we've got businesses that are suffering because of the hollowing of downtown. And so in my platform, we've actually got to use the reserves that have been accumulated. In fact, they are higher post-COVID than they are pre-COVID, that we can actually stabilize, to actually make sure there are fixed costs, because these are fixed costs of businesses. And in some cases, we've seen businesses, and talking with business owners, their property taxes increasing 300%. So we've got to stabilize that. We've also got to look for residences. Are we getting value for our dollars? In fact, I know there's a rhetoric right now, we've got to actually bring taxes down, but actually when I talk to people, they actually know the amazing services that we get from our city, but can we continue to do that in a cost-effective way that we're getting value? So this is also addressing the sprawl that this current council, in terms of how we've committed to new communities without actually looking at the balance and the fairness of property taxes from the inner city applied to the outer city. And so we've got to actually look at the whole system, and that's what I'm advocating. In fact, I'm committing to 2 terms as mayor, because we have to renegotiate with great relationships with the province to actually redo a deal that makes sense for the city of Calgary as we grow, because we're growing, because we're going to be this global place that attracts people to live, learn, work, and play.
All right, thank you, Ms. Damery. And for the record, Mr. Novak, you're up next. We do plan and hope to get to the question before the next council, whether to continue the sprawl versus the densification of our core. But this one's about the property tax shift and what you would do to make up for lost revenue if you're not open to raising property taxes. Mr. Novak, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I am not open to raising property taxes for either residents or businesses. Our city council always tells us that Calgary has some of the lowest taxes imaginable in urban centres in Canada, and that's not true. If you divide it per capita, the operating budget here in a place like Edmonton, we actually pay 20% more per individual here for services that are not parallel or as good as other cities. Number 2, we see from 2016 to now, we have actually increased the operating budget of Calgary by 30%. Who in this room or in this city has seen their disposable cash go up by 30% during the most difficult economic times imaginable? We need to start with efficiencies. We need to look internally in City Hall, City Administration, to figure out how to render services more cost effectively. I have programs in place for that. Number 2, we need to encourage businesses to relocate here. The only way you're going to do that is lowering taxes, cutting regulations, cutting red tape, so we're actually appealing to businesses to locate here. And number 3, I want to set up a fund that is almost like a Dragon's Den concept, where we can reach out with programming and funding and mentorship to businesses, startups, to apply to that fund, to bring their business here, start their business here, bring prosperity, jobs, and you know what? We'll own part of that, and we will have another revenue stream that isn't just tax dollars.
Thanks, Mr. Novak. All right, Mr. Hartley, or no, Mr. Field first, and then Mr. Hartley. So 2 tokens redeemed. Ms. Gondek wishes to as well. Anybody else? Mr. Wang, it feels like so long since we've talked. No? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Field.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to stop talking about revenue issues and talk about our spending habits here in the city of Calgary. I'm a residential as well as commercial property owner, so I feel the pain on both sides. With my plan, if I'm elected as mayor, I want to talk about how we budget in the city of Calgary. Currently, we budget based on last year's spending, and we add on for new wants, needs, and wishes, and come up with next year's budget. I want to revisit that. If we truly want to make changes in how we operate in the city of Calgary, I think I want to implement priority-based budgeting, which we started out with a designated amount of money, and through citizen input, we prioritize our spending habits within the city of Calgary, and when the money runs out, we stop spending. That way, we're not continually going back to citizens and business owners here in the city of Calgary for more property taxes. This spending habits have to change. If we're going to do that, we have to rethink how we're looking at how we're spending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Field. And just for my edification, you have 1 token left or 2?
4.
One, right? Okay, thank you, Mr. Hartley. You're up next, and I believe you have one left too after this. Go ahead.
All right, so the question comes around property tax and would we increase property tax? If I'm elected mayor, we will completely freeze the property tax and do as much as we can to decrease our property tax. This is a major pillar of my platform because it's a major issue in the city. Property tax is the largest source of revenue for the city of Calgary by a factor of nearly 3. And any good business person knows that is not a great situation to be in when it comes to your customers. That shows a lack of progress from the current city council, and we need to make some changes. I plan to lower the property tax in the city of Calgary by adding an additional tax on foreign, large, profitable corporations. So if you meet all 3 of those criteria, you're based in another country, you have over 5,000 employees, and you're already profitable, you will pay an additional tax to do business in this city. And that money will directly go to offsetting the property tax for both businesses as well as residential homeowners. Now, one problem that I have with the property tax in the city in general is that it's broken into city property tax and provincial property tax. And some of the council members here, including Ms. Jyoti Gondek, don't communicate what the actual property tax is. Our property tax going to the provincial government in Alberta is around 35%, and she is exaggerating that number. So I'd love to hear what she has to say about it. But my plan is to increase the taxes on foreign, large, profitable corporations to offset a decrease in property tax for the citizens of Calgary. My name is Zach Hartley. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. And conveniently, Ms. Gondek is up next on this topic. So let's hear from you, Ms. Gondek. On the question of residential property taxes, are you in favor of increasing? And if not, how would you plan to make up for the lost revenue?
So question of clarification, is it a rebuttal now and I don't need to give
No, you got the full 90. Go ahead if you want to include your rebuttal there.
Thank you very much. I think it needs to be clarified that the only revenue stream that the city has is property taxes. There is something called a Municipal Government Act. That is the legislation that dictates how we collect revenue, and it is solely through property taxes. There is no fictional tax that you can apply to corporations that are foreign. That would be something you'd need to negotiate with the provincial government. What's the terminology we're using? We'd need the government to come to the table to have a conversation with us to renegotiate the funding and financing formula that cities have. I'd like to make sure that people are also aware that we were asked to contribute an extra $13 million to the police budget. We will be asked to contribute an extra $20 million towards fluoridation. We have paid countless millions of dollars towards maintaining our affordable housing stock because the provincial government over time has stopped funding the city in that regard. So your property taxes are paying for things that were provincial responsibilities. Why on earth would we not renegotiate how much money we are sending back to them when they have offloaded more responsibility to us? That's why we're asking them to keep a greater proportion of your property taxes in your city to provide you the services you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Okay, anybody else want to play a poker chip? Mr. Ogbonna, you go ahead. Get up there. We're doing well for time. But we want to hear from you. We're just over an hour in, by the way. We're heading into our 5th of 9 questions for those of you keeping track at home. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. I do believe that my experience in politics, you have to have the right tone. And originally where I've come from, if you're asking for something, you have to be very nice to ask for it. This current council have not been nice in asking for something, and that's the reason why. If you don't have a relationship, if you don't have a relationship that tends to probably appear to be accommodating with provincial government or federal government, you're not going to get anything done in this city. I've lived in Toronto, which of course people call center of universe. I've observed how politics is done there in the biggest city, in this Canada. So my goal is that we have to set the right tone in council to be able to advocate on issues that we need in this city, Calgary force, with the provincial government, and as well with the federal government. And looking at alternative source of funding in terms of public-private initiatives and seeing how we can draw in huge investments. As regards to property tax in this city, I've been listening to all that they have said, and my goal and the vision of my campaign is to cap it at 10% over 4 years. It is very workable, and setting the right tone, having the right negotiation with the provincial government. As Zach said, they're taking close, not just 35, it's 37% plus they're taking from each and every one of us, from the city. That's not a fair deal. So I'm going to ask for a fair deal with the provincial government to reevaluate what they're taking from this city. But the most important thing is that we're capping 10% across board from homeowners and businesses. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anybody else? Last call. Mr. Wang, go ahead.
Thank you. My answer is clear, no. I will cut residential property tax 23.5% within the 4-year term. I will cut business property tax 26%. That's 454 million less property tax. Why? We talk about efficiency all the time, but between 2003 and 2019, our population increased 39%, but the city's full-time staffing increased 47%. That is an 8% negative efficiency. Inflation was during that time 32%, but the city's average salary increased 64%. That is another 32% negative efficiency. What is that cost? In 2019 alone, that cost 520 million of our property tax. So we will have to cut that first. I have a question here. In 2020, we paid property tax $2,651 million, and we sent to the province 779 million property tax. But the city council say we paid 40% there. Why? Council Farkas didn't say a single word.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That is time. Thank you for that. All right, next question goes to Mr. Field, Mr. Davison, and Mr. Wang again. And Mr. Field, feel free to get up there at the center stage mark. Better transit connections to and through the downtown core, they are key to economic growth, and many students and other Calgarians require accessible and convenient transit to get around the city. All three orders of government have committed money to build the Green Line, the most expensive infrastructure project in our city's history. The next mayor is going to need to work with council to see this project through, and the next major decision will revolve around the funding for phase 2 and whether the construction will be focused on the line being extended north over the Bow, which is the plan currently, or further south, as some have argued for. So, Mr. Field, which are you in favor of and why?
Well, first of all, I am a huge supporter of Green Line. If we're talking about a world-class city, we have to talk about world-class transportation. My concern right now is with the current plan with City Council of having the Southeast Leg built but not reaching the hospital. We should be shovels in the ground. The land is acquired, it's flat, there's no surprises. We need to stop talking about tunneling underneath downtown Calgary. $2 billion of the $5.5 billion budget is dedicated to downtown tunneling. There's too much risk involved there. I think if we move forward with that plan, we will not see north of the river construction of LRT in decades to come. So there's no question we have to think differently. The other challenge I have is it's turned into a mega project. And what they've done is they've combined the southeast leg as well as the downtown core. We've now created a situation where local contractors won't be able to bid on it because they don't have the proper tooling and so forth, and it becomes a mega project. So the profit margin on a project like this is going to leave Canada and go overseas. That money could be retained here in the city of Calgary. The other thing I want to touch on is we got to continue the conversation, or at least finish the conversation about connecting YYC with the downtown core. Montreal, when they're done their rail link, Calgary will be the only major city in Canada that doesn't have affordable rail transportation between YYC and the downtown core. We've got to correct that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Field. Okay, Mr. Davison, you're up. Again, the question is, are you in favor of extending the line over the Bow north or further south, and why?
Sure, thank you very much. I mean, Green Line is a critically important project to all Calgarians, and not just because of a piece of train. It's an overall piece of transit infrastructure that is going to continue to serve Calgarians as we move towards 2 million people. Not only is it environmentally friendly, it's just about moving people more efficiently. Like I say, I think, you know, the Green Line, our next challenge is really how we're going to extend north. Council has made a commitment to the direction of Green Line, and security and certainty are utmostly important on this project. We've seen a ton of provincial delays on this cost us more money. That has cost us opportunity to continue to build that track. And so going forward, we're going to have to figure out what some of the challenges lie with respect to the funding, but it's a critical project to get right. When it comes to overall transit infrastructure, I think we have to remember that we have the Route Ahead project, and that's one I'm also committed to and was happy to bring forward as the Chair of Transportation and Transit. That is going to connect us in the next term to the airport. So there'll be a lot of talk about what we think we should be doing. If we're going to be a world-class city, we are going to have world-class connections to our airport. And it starts with a private sector train that I've brought forward to actually see get accomplished, so that we can have multiple lanes that we can improve on to create accessibility to downtown. Because remember, overall transit access is actually access to opportunity, opportunity to employment, opportunity to school, opportunity to a new way of life.
Thanks, Mr. Davison. Mr. Wang, you're back up. Are you in favor of taking the Green Line north over the Bow or stretching it south further?
Thank you for the question. My answer is clear. I'm fully against the Green Line. Nobody can consciously say we are against the public transit. Nobody. We know we need that, it is right, but we can't afford that. The Green Line is going to be more unaffordable than the Winter Olympics. 2 years ago, I would believe if we have a plebiscite, more people, more than 56.4% people we would know. Now, much worse than that. We simply can't afford that. And the geology in our downtown is terrible. I'm a geologist. So our tax is already too high already. People talk about our cut of property tax, but spending projects every project is moving forward. We can't afford that. Now for the Green Line, we have one voice in our city council against the Green Line. The condition of funding from federal and both federal and provincial government was never removed. Things were not changed. But why that voice was changed to a yes? So I have this question. I can't understand. I have this question for Council Farkas. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wang. We are redeeming tokens now. Mr. Farkas, if you'd like to redeem one in order to answer that question, I'll allow you the opportunity. Or would you like to take that as a rebuttal? I'll take a rebuttal. Okay. Mr. Novak is up next. And then we'll get a 30-second rebuttal. Any more tokens to be redeemed? This is your last one, Ms. Damery. All right. I'll put you on the list. Mr. Novak, go ahead.
The Green Line in its current configuration is not feasible. Going through downtown is going to disrupt our downtown when we're actually trying to attract business into it. It will go over budget. Many $million, billions, pardon me, not millions. It's interesting that City Council has voted this numerous times, and it's always in the news that they feel it will create 20,000 jobs. But no, it'll create potentially 20,000 man-year jobs, which is only about 1,500 to 2,000 jobs spread over the 6-year construction phase. So it's not the boon to employment that they would have you believe. Going underground, as Mr. Wang said, it is expensive. We have high groundwater table there. It will take about 100,000 semi-loads through our downtown just to haul the material out. It'll be totally disruptive. It's going from Shepherd to downtown. It's a train from almost nowhere to nowhere, and our ridership will be very low. No one ever talks about operating costs. Based on ridership right now, studies that were done, we will probably have to subsidize that at a tax cost of $100 million a year because ridership won't be enough to pay the difference. I ask, why have we never done a train to our airport, 52,000 jobs? Why don't we do better transportation to where people actually need it and it's not just an option? If we do this now, we will compromise our ability to do the projects we need in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Novak. Mr. Farkas, do you have your head around your 30-second rebuttal to Mr. Wang?
Does that use a token?
No, go ahead. You got 30 seconds. Starting now.
Thanks. And given that the project has been approved by Justin Trudeau, it's been approved by Jason Kenney, and it's been approved by City Council, the project is proceeding. So the question for voters becomes electing a mayor and council who you trust to ask the hard questions to keep the project on track. And as far as north versus south, I don't think we should take that bait. I think we need a long-term plan that extends that phase 2 to where it's needed most, which is the far north and the far south.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Damery, you're up. Final token redeemed for Jan Damery on the question of whether or not the Green Line, the most expensive infrastructure project in our city's history, should continue north or stretch further south in phase 2.
So I've been spending a lot of time talking with people, particularly in the north, who are incredibly underserved. And we need to have a huge commitment in actually moving the Green Line north, because actually that's where we get more ridership. It actually connects people who need to be connected to jobs, to school, to entertainment, to recreation. So I'm committed to doing that. In fact, on Monday I announced my transit plan, Network 2030, that actually leverages continued funding, because it's also from the federal and provincial governments, in addition to what we are already committed to, that actually ensures that we become this world-class city. Fundamental in connecting the 4 quadrants, because right now we need the Green Line to actually be that backbone piece of infrastructure that starts to connect our quadrants. And this is actually what Network 2030 does. It starts to build out to make sure that we can get more ridership. And so we don't have kids traveling an hour each way to get to school in the north. This is what's going on right now. Puts tremendous stresses on family. And let's talk about climate change and our inability to meet our carbon emission targets. And investing in public transit is fundamental to reduce our carbon footprint. 1 train gets 40 cars off our streets. It also helps with congestion. So again, it is about going north, and we are just putting out the project to tender. We will find out if the market will place the risk that people are talking about, and then we will have to reconfigure. But you need a council and a mayor that knows actually how to build infrastructure. I'm that mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Damery, and thank you for teeing up our next topic, which is going to be all about climate change. But first, Mr. Hartley, you want to redeem your final token on the question of the future of the Green Line. Go ahead.
So the Green Line so far is an absolute disaster. It is a joke and an embarrassment to the city, because so far it is over budget, it hasn't even started yet, and it concludes at the city landfill. This is not the right use of our resources, and it also feels like it has been heavily influenced by the builders that have just set up brand new neighborhoods at the end of the Green Line. So I have a lot of concerns about trust in our current city council members and their ability to make the right choices for the citizens of Calgary. That's one of the reasons that I'm running. And when it comes to the Green Line, we need to run the Green Line to our international airport. We are one of the only major cities in North America that doesn't have a direct connection between our international airport and our downtown core. If you go to Tokyo, if you go to New York, if you go to London, there is always direct access from the airport to the downtown core, and that's because it creates a more vibrant downtown core. It creates more business. It creates more opportunity for trade shows to come to the city, easier travel access. There are tons of benefits to running our Green Line up north to the airport, but instead, we are going to spend $5.5 billion to connect our downtown core to the Shepherd landfill, and then another few $1 billion to run it to the brand new neighborhoods that all the City of Calgary builders have just put up, such as Mahogany. Instead, we need to run our transit systems and our infrastructure through neighborhoods that are going to use it. We need to run it through lower income neighborhoods that are going to get the most benefit from our investment in transit in the city. My name is Zach Hartley. I'm going to fight against the current plan for the Green Line if you vote for me on October 18th.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. And up next is Mr. Ogbonna, Ms. Gondek, and Mr. Hartley again on the topic we had just touched on. Feel free to come to the center stage. So arguably, yes, the most important issue facing voters the world over, and of course here at home, will be climate and the climate crisis for decades to come, right? This is an issue we're all going to face. 3 years ago, Council signed off on the city's climate resilience strategy, but last month's new report from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change made it really clear that governments need to take more action than initially planned, and they need to do it far faster to address this issue. So the question is, as mayor, what other investments would you push for to ensure the City of Calgary has more sustainable, greener infrastructure? So aside from the Green Line, and think how we move around, think about how we heat or build our homes, what would you do to address the climate crisis?
Thanks, Rob. Great question. First of all, I'm not a huge fan of the Green Line, and for so many reasons, and I share similar ideas with Zach to an extent. First of all, the Green Line is heavily invested by the 1%. It's not going to solve immediate access problem or create jobs immediately. I'm all for expanding the current BRT program that we have and more handicap access for senior citizens and a lot of young folks, making sure if I have my way, I will put up a flat fee, free transit fees for students and all over the place in this great city. So I'm all pushing for innovations to innovate every aspect of our industries, expanding more on our resilience strategy that we have on economies, both on the environment, and we can't do this all alone. So we need to engage stakeholders and our environmental groups who are experts in this to have conversations and see the path, more sustainable path for this city. I'm all for green energy. I believe that the 21st century, we need to begin to move into renewable energy, science and technology, and we have all the tools here. So there's no point why we cannot get what we need, but the most important thing is to engage the stakeholders in this city for us to have these strong conversations towards a green future for this great city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. Up next, Ms. Gondek on the question. As mayor, what other investments would you push for to ensure the city of Calgary has more sustainable, greener infrastructure in the future?
Thank you very much. I was actually just talking with Mr. Davison from our climate department, and his greatest advice to council is to declare a climate crisis, to declare a climate emergency, to state very clearly, very intentionally that our city recognizes this. There are cities around the world who have made such a declaration, who are now receiving capital from groups that are interested in creating greener energy solutions, from corporations that are interested in partnering with cities that are doing more sustainable, cleaner initiatives. The capital will flow if we simply declare a fact. We also need to make sure that we're doing our part as a city to make our fleets more electric where possible, to make sure we are approving more permeable surfaces as we're approving different types of developments in our city. We need to be much more aggressive in our targets. 2050 won't cut it. We need to cut it down to 2035 where possible, and we need to ask our partners at NMAX to do the same. We also just approved a clean energy improvement program so that citizens can access dollars to retrofit their homes and do it in a way that they can pay back those funds over time. So we need to stay true to the fact that the climate is an important initiative for our city. We need to declare it publicly. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Gondek. Mr. Hartley, you're up next. And yes, just up the QE2, Edmonton has declared a climate emergency. Vancouver as well. Calgary has not yet. What would you do infrastructure-wise to address climate?
Yeah, so when it comes to climate, it's a really interesting thing because it is happening, it is real, we need to take into account for it, and we need to do as much as we possibly can to make our city better in the future. Same thing with our entire world. Now, Calgary as a city, though, was based on oil and gas, and we need to make sure that we support that oil and gas industry. We need to make sure that we can keep them alive because that is the industry that built our city. It is not going to be the industry that builds our city in the future. That is going to come from new companies, from new startups, and from new technologies. And so there are a lot of small things that the city can do. Electrify our fleet, put in more charging stations, make things more efficient. But none of those things are going to be the game changers that help us move forward in a world post-climate change. And so what we need to do as a city, if we're going to actively try and push hard to fight climate change, is we need to become the center of climate change technology. We need to specifically support any company or entrepreneur that wants to come out and wants to create a business around creating and solving the problem with climate change. We want Calgary to be the center and the hub of the world for where they build that business. There is only so much we can do as a city, from electrifying our feet and all of these small little things, but the real change and the massive monumental shift is going to come from entrepreneurs and businesses that are developing new technologies and new solutions. And if we can come together and build an environment that fosters those types of things, we can solve this problem, we can beat climate change, and Calgary can be the center of attention in that success.
Thanks, Mr. Hartley. Any tokens to redeem? Okay, Mr. Novak, you're up first. Mr. Davison, you're after Mr. Novak. And I'm noting we have few tokens to redeem, so we're cruising along. All right, Mr. Novak, floor is yours.
Our environment and our climate is crucial. I have a record of working with that. Almost 20 years ago, I introduced cutting-edge technology into the oil and gas industry to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce carbon emissions, and I've continued to do that to this day with things, reduced chemical injection pumps, in-pipe turbine generators. I've already started an advisory board in our city to look at how we could take waste to energy. Over 400 cities in Europe do it. We don't seem to do it at our landfill here because we just think we have more space. My lawn signs, for instance, we're taking them to biofuel when we're done with them because chloroplast signs tend to live centuries in landfills, and I'm very much against that. We can do things that will showcase what our province has already done. We have in our oil and gas industry the highest ESG in the world, but we never tell that narrative. My plan has clean energy as part of it, which is green, solar, wind, but it's also the technology and the companies that have already built these things here. We need to showcase that, make us the manufacturer, make us the leading edge that sells that, promotes it to the entire world. We have the entrepreneurial spirit here, we have the creative spirit here, we have the engineers here that are already doing it, but we never talk about it and we never showcase it. This is an opportunity that we're missing out on, and we can actually profit and at the same time be a better, wiser city.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. Mr. Davison, you want to get in on the question of, as mayor, what other investments would you push for to ensure the city of Calgary has more sustainable, greener infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think, first of all, I think we have to recognize there is a climate crisis going on, and I would move forward and encourage City Council to take the steps and stop ignoring that things are going on. But it's not just about ringing the bell. It's actually about how do we action tangible climate change and how do we action our resiliency plan. I think there's lots of things we can do with respect to buildings and making sure that not only are we mitigating flood areas, but utilizing materials that we're building with to ensure the sustainability of buildings over the long term, accelerating projects like the electrification of fleet and looking at new options down the road like hydrogen, which is becoming increasingly commercially viable, thinking about our NMAX team and how we're already continuing to build on things where we take grey water out of Bonnybrook and we put it into steam generation. That's a great way that we can recycle instead of dumping grey water back into our rivers, and looking at like how we fast track decarbonization projects here in the city and removing barriers to get those things stood up. Calgary has a significant opportunity to continue to lead the charge on energy, and we're already seeing that in the private sector. There's a lot of money that the oil companies are spending right now because oil companies don't want to be oil companies for the next 5 years. They want to be energy companies for the next 200 years. We need to partner with them as well as the federal government and capitalize on how we can really take this opportunity forward in a world where we can have an opportunity to lead the change in energy and continue to solve some of the biggest problems we face in today's world.
Thanks, Mr. Davison. Don't go anywhere, because as we move on to question number 7, you'll kick us off. You want to redeem a token? Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Farkas. Go ahead. No, go ahead. A breather. Did I miss you earlier? My bad if I did. All right. Mr. Farkas on the question of greener infrastructure for our city.
Thanks. And while there's a demand for energy, there's going to be a demand for Alberta and Canada to be able to meet that. I'm unapologetically supportive of our responsible energy industry. We're a world leader in this. And the vision for our city has always been the destination of choice for the world's smartest people to solve the world's toughest problems. We've proven that we do that in oil and gas. We're doing that now in energy and technology. And there's a lot of other growth potential areas as well. But to be clear, I believe that our next mayor must stand up on the nationwide stage and the world stage to tell Calgary's story and to correct misinformation and to correct wrongs that happen. Say, for example, if the mayor of Montreal authorizes millions of liters of sewage into the St. Lawrence River, Calgary's mayor needs to be there to be able to educate individuals like that about what's going on today here in Calgary and what's going on today here in Alberta. If other municipalities are going to use their legal departments to apply for intervenor status to block pipeline projects, we better be there to be able to advocate for our energy industry and responsible energy production. So my vision is for a coast-to-coast-to-coast alliance of towns, municipalities, and cities who benefit from responsible energy production to be able to, again, advocate for that market access so that we can continue to meet that energy need. Again, we have the best possible record, environmentally, ethically, and technologically. And it's time to better tell our story and not apologize for our responsible energy industry.
Okay, anybody else with a token to redeem? Going once? Mr. Davison, the spotlight is yours again. Yeah. So the last question raises the issue of sprawl versus densification. We saw that play out in the debate over the city's guidebook for great communities. So the question, Mr. Davison, is do you think the city should stop allowing the expansion of its footprint and instead focus on densifying the so-called inner city?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, but just to comment on the last question, thank you to Councillor Farkas for actually reading Calgary Economic Strategy. He rehearsed it just as well as we thought he would. On the balance of where we're moving forward with respect to development in this city, first and foremost, it's all about balance. It's creating a vibrant downtown where people want to work. But going through the stages of life, where else do people want to be? We have to recognize that certain individuals will want backyards. And so there's a demand balance that we have to meet. And ultimately, the plan is really to work with the development sector differently about how they bring capital projects forward and how the city can commit to those projects at some time. We don't need 14 new communities all unlocking at the same time, but we do have to meet demand because that demand ensures that Calgary does remain an affordable and dynamic city where everybody wants to live.
Okay, Mr. Wang, I want you to stand by with your answer because we're going to get Mr. Farkas up with 30 seconds of rebuttal to that, your memorization of the Calgary Economic Strategy. What would you like to say about that, Mr. Farkas?
Well, I'll respectfully say to my colleague that the words don't match up with the actions. So if you're going to talk a good game on things like climate and good stewardship, why would you authorize, say, NMAX's acquisition of Emera Maine, which puts City Calgary taxpayers on the hook for nuclear waste facilities in the States? Other things like, say, if you believe in our green spaces, why would you continue to, say, support selling off a portion of our park system, Richmond Green Park? Again, the words do not line up with the actions.
Okay, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to rebut. Should you choose to? Yeah, I haven't had one yet. Go ahead.
How far does this go?
Yeah, how far does
Hopefully
this
not
go?
much further because we got to move on, but go ahead.
Well, at the end of the day, you know, my track record is very clear, and a lot of people want to talk about all the things they say yes to, but at the same time have never actually brought those projects to City Council to vote on. Arbitrarily throwing things on the floor of Council without doing your homework does very little to benefit the citizens of this city. I think through the projects, I bring the experts together, I get things done. That's all I can say.
All right, that one's going to continue in the scrums that'll take place after this event, I'm sure. Mr. Wang, you are up at center stage, please. And the question again is, do you think the city should stop allowing the expansion of its footprint and instead focus on densifying the inner city?
Yeah, I believe the root issue, the driving force, is not the building to the urban sprawl or densification of inner town. The driving force is the revenue. City overtaxed us for years. I said that 4 times of inflation, property tax to our residents. But still, we can't pay off their over-increased salary. So city was seeking for revenue. It's not for the future of the city. That's a root issue. We have to resolve the city's spending problem and stop them from fighting against our residents for parks, for green land, or densification of inner town against the interest of communities. And people may feel they will follow the interest of the developers. No, they will follow the interest of their own paycheck. City over hiring their staff, over increase their salary. Between 2003 and 2019, inflation was 32%, but the city council's salary increased 102%.
We'll leave it there.
Mayor? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Mr. Novak, you're up next on the question of sprawl, continued sprawl versus densification.
Calgary is unique and it's a beautiful city, and it's a city that should be providing accommodating housing for all. I don't ever want us to be Vancouver or Toronto. Nothing against them, but that's not us. If you want to live on the 36th floor of a building, that's amazing. We have that. We have some densification. Of all the cities between Toronto and Vancouver, we have the most densification. But there comes a time in many people's lives where they are at the 36th floor, 2 children, and there's not a football field, a soccer pitch, a park within 10 blocks. You should have the ability to go out and move into those spaces, a front yard, a backyard, near a park, down the street from a school. And especially with the pandemic now, where we have nervousness of being too close with people because of the spread of infection, disease, sometimes you want a bit of elbow room, and that's fine. A healthy system is an organic system where we work with our developers and we find the accommodating factor of what the market asks for. Densification is great, and I'm all about it, but we still have to make sure that we're respecting the rest of Calgarians, because a lot of people come here because there is a bit of elbow room, there is blue sky, we have those spaces, we have those parks, we have those recreational facilities. If this city is managed properly, sprawl can be done without impacting the environment negatively and without impacting taxpayers in a non-positive way.
Thank you, Mr. Novak. Anyone want to redeem a token on that one? You're at your limit, sir. No. How many questions left? Is that what you're asking? I'm sorry, 2 questions left. And if nobody would like to redeem a token, we're moving on to question 8. And this one goes to Mr. Ogbonna. So come on up to center stage, please, Mr. Farkas and Mr. Hartley. Different topic altogether. After decades of indifference and ignorance, many Canadians now seem to be seized with the idea of addressing reconciliation in a serious and meaningful way, and an urgent way as well. The City of Calgary has taken some symbolic steps, but the most difficult and tangible steps in the calls to action before the city, they have not taken place. And there are no timelines to implement those calls. So what would you do to see the calls to action implemented? Is your mic off? Do we have a battery issue?
Okay, I think so. Thank you very much, Rob. It's been an ongoing discussion over the course of this debate, and I've been in touch with different Indigenous chiefs, and still working to have more conversations with them. It is with all due apologies with First Nations, I do think that we should stop playing politics as regards to First Nations issues. There's so much politics behind the scene for so many reasons well known to career politicians. I'm an advocate for 8 years max in public office. So I intend to engage the First Nations and those groups who are working for the interests of First Nations here to address those issues. And in my own experience, being a development consultant, the best effective, efficient way to get things done is to engage those that's been affected. So I'm going to engage the First Nations here in this great city, the 7 treaty nations, come to the table, create a commission, begin to hear from them, listen to them. And first of all, we have to listen to them. And then we go from there, engage others, civil society organizations who are part of this, and make sure we have a sustained dialogue and begin to look forward to sustainable solutions to address most of the things that is affecting our First Nation community here in this great city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ogbonna. Mr. Farkas, you're up next on this. Again, there are no timelines currently to implement those calls to action. The question is, what would you do to see the calls to action implemented?
Thank you. And many of the calls are symbolic in nature, and I've supported efforts along the lines of, say, displaying proudly our Treaty 7 flags within the council chamber. I think that's a great reminder for everyday Calgarians to know that there's a long history on the land. Another more practical measure has been my advocacy to reform the City of Calgary's public art program. I think that our art program is a failure largely as a result of not being able to tell Calgary's story as well as the story of our Indigenous neighbors. So advocacy for better access to those opportunities. Next, in terms of on the ground, I'm privileged to represent Ward 11, which borders along the southwest, the Tsuut'ina Nation, advocating for mutual support around crime and safety, advocating for mutual support around development issues, making sure that we can continue to extend the First Nation Tsuut'ina here in Calgary, something that many other nations don't have access to, which is reliable, clean, safe drinking water. So every step of the way, I've worked hard as a city council member to not just pay lip service to issues around reconciliation, but on the ground to work together, to collaborate, and again, seeking that opportunity, that potential to live out a great Canadian life, which is one where you should have no fear and you should have the best possible opportunity. There's so much tremendous opportunity for common ground as we continue to explore those issues, and I see that as central to the next mayor's mandate.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Mr. Field, you're up on this topic of reconciliation. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Did I say Mr. Field? Mr. Hartley, you're up on this. My apologies.
So when it comes to the issue of reconciliation, I think the first thing that we need to do is acknowledge and realize that we haven't done things right, we're not doing things right, and we need to drastically change and improve how we treat and work with our Indigenous and First Nations communities. I think the fact that we are still talking about this topic so heavily and it's such a big priority right now, it really shows the lack of progress that we've made in this area over the last 4 to 8 years. And I think that the new people that are coming into the city really need to look at this issue with some serious open eyes and open hearts. We need to bring these communities into our city council. We need to converse with them, and we need to do as much as we can to help them, whether it's clean water, it's education, it's access to job training, whatever it is, we need to understand from them, and we need to put it into a priority list and then put that in front of City Council and make sure that these calls to actions that we are talking about, it goes 1, 2, 3. These are the priorities, and these are the first ones that are going to get done. And we need to communicate with those nations. We need to communicate with the Indigenous. We need to communicate with those communities that have been underserved. And as a city municipal government, we need to make sure that we are doing as much as we possibly can to bring them up to the exact same standard of living as everybody else. We also need to help them in the areas where they need it. I've had numerous people email me talking about bear patrols, talking about additional resources, talking about things that the city can provide that we're not doing right now. And I think that is a lack of ambition from the current city council. And if I'm elected mayor, I will solve that problem.
Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Anyone interested in redeeming a token? Okay, Mr. Wang, go ahead. I will emphasize that Ms. Gondek, Mr. Farkas, Mr. Field, Mr. Novak, you have tokens left to play and only one question. Coming up, Ms. Gondek, you will be asked a question, as will you, Mr. Field, so this is your last opportunity. There you go. Okay, Mr. Wang, the floor is yours on reconciliation.
Okay. Reconciliation is a painful topic. We all know what is right. Not for years, for decades. We know that is right. Why are we still here, continuing to prove what is right? Because we have a single hurdle in front of us. That's the budget issue. Because the city is overspending, even with 4 times of inflation in property tax hike, we can't do anything. I talked with Aboriginal chief recently. I have a dozen homeless friends, half of them Aboriginal people. That's a national disgrace. We have to solve our spending problem first so that I can bring 3,000 homeless Calgarians back home. So don't talk the talk, do the job. You know what is right, we know what is right. Don't prove that again. That is against our conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wang. Ms. Gondek, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the question. Truth and reconciliation has been a journey, and I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of it. I think we have made massive strides simply because the facts that presented themselves by finding the graves and remains of children were something that we just couldn't avoid. And so when it comes to the actions we have to take, Calgary has White Goose Flying as the report which tells us which actions from Truth and Reconciliation Commission we should be working on. The first one was flags inside chambers and outside, to have a Treaty 7 flag, a commitment to a gathering space, and acknowledging residential schools, the survivors and those who've died. The next steps that we've been advised to take by our Indigenous Relations Office is to carry on with public education, to challenge any curriculum that doesn't include truth and reconciliation, to provide affordable housing and homelessness prevention solutions, and here's the big one, to have a budget for the Indigenous Relations Office that doesn't keep getting slashed. And I think we can do that by making this a standing item at a policy committee, which we did in July, and the more important thing, creating a perpetual funding stream that is dedicated from any land sales. It's one thing to do a land acknowledgement, it's entirely another to dedicate funding from any land sales that the city has over time to go directly towards the Indigenous Relations Office. We have to put the funds in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Mr. Field, this is your last opportunity to redeem a token, so if you'd like to, this is the time. You bet.
If I could just find it. There we go. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's no question. This is very personal for me. I've grown so much in the last months, years around this, and not having lived experience in truth and reconciliation. I know that we have to acknowledge, we have to get comfortable with having uncomfortable conversations. And for me, I'll dedicate my time as mayor towards having those conversations, making sure that the Indigenous and other community sectors are at the table from the conversations, with the conversations right from the get-go. We have to move forward, but we have to get comfortable with having uncomfortable, awkward conversations. We need to improve as a society. I dedicate myself to learning more and being open-hearted and open-minded to any conversation, because I truly believe when we do that, we have room for growth, and progress is what happens in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've reached the final question of this forum. Time is flying by, isn't it? So much fun. This one does go to Ms. Gondek, Mr. Field, and Ms. Damery. And it really has to do with the reason we're all here. It's the meat of the matter, the election itself, and students in particular. Students and young people, we know they're less likely to vote. I haven't seen the numbers from Monday night, but the 2019 federal election saw the participation rate among those aged 18 to 25, 13 points below the national average. Boo. The Calgary Student Alliance has been working hard to increase voter turnout among post-secondary students. The single biggest way to do that is to allow students to vote on their post-secondary campuses. Makes sense, right? Regardless of where they might live in the city. If they're living here, let them vote. Students did not have this opportunity for the recent federal election and had to fight hard to have it again for this municipal election. So the final question, how have you as a candidate advocated for on-campus voting, and how will you work as mayor to ensure that on-campus voting becomes the norm for our municipal elections going forward? Ms. Gondek, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege to work with student leaders in this city to challenge why we couldn't have on-campus voting this year. And it turns out there's some stipulations within the legislation and the Local Authorities Election Act that was making it difficult. But those are excuses for not encouraging students to vote. There was problems around how many people could fit in a facility. You had to accommodate every single candidate as well as their scrutineers, which was causing problems for capacity. Together with student leaders, we went back to city administrators and said, you have to make this work. The compromises that were reached are not bad, they're not great. We have more advanced polling stations than originally anticipated, and students have to have the opportunity to vote on campus on election day. And this was a hard-fought battle by student leaders, and if we don't stand behind those leaders as members of council, we're not doing our job. Moving forward, what I'd like to do is talk to the provincial government to make sure that the Local Authorities Election Act is able to accommodate student voting. It is incredibly difficult to study, to take care of your familial needs, and work a job and get out to vote. Students are doing the best they can. We have to give them every opportunity to vote. We can't blame them for not voting if we're not giving them the opportunities.
Thank you, Ms. Gondek. Mr. Fields, how have you worked for on-campus voting, and how will you as mayor?
Yeah, no question. And in fact, it came up earlier in conversation with Marley here, and we were talking about, and we have had numerous conversations around vote anywhere poll stations and so forth. And we, if we're talking about the future, we want to make sure that that next generation, those post-secondary, have access to voting. And we're talking about building a great city, something we can all be proud of. I think of my three kids; they're all 20 to 30 years of age, and making sure that they have a voice here in the city of Calgary about what they want for the future of the city of Calgary. So making sure I will advocate. I can't believe that we're regurgitating this conversation every election term. We got to get it mandated. We got to get it in place where we can continue to have access for all Calgarians to vote anywhere in the city of Calgary. So I will continue to work with student unions, and I look forward to that. But we got to make sure that that next generation gets out and vote. It's very important. So on election day, make sure you show up. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mr. Field. Ms. Damery, you're up on this question of what you've done in the past. What would you do in the future to get more young people voting, and particularly on campus?
Thanks very much. I'm incredibly proud. One of my goals in this election was to change the conversation. And this was one of the topics in which my campaign team advocated strongly to ensure that students actually had options in terms of voting on campus. We are talking about the future of our city, the future of your city. And so it's really vital right now that you get out and vote to help be part of that conversation and choose the leadership that you believe that actually can drive the future economics and opportunity and ensure that we have things to do in this community. I also want to take the opportunity and just share an observation, because we've all seen it today, the current dysfunction of this existing council. We've seen it on stage, how they bat and forth, and this has got to stop, because it is creating spin, not only in council and also in administration. We need leadership that can pull people together. We have seen a council that can't even come together during a pandemic to pass vaccine passports until a couple of days ago. This is about coming together for the future of our community, and we need strong leadership to do that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Farkas, Mr. Novak, and Mr. Wang. If my count is correct, you have those little poker chips. Yeah. In your pocket, you can't take them home with you, so you might as well play them, right? Mr. Novak, come on up and round us out here. Are you going to play yours as well, Mr. Farkas?
Do we get one more, or this is the last?
This is the last question. Okay, Mr. Novak, the floor is yours.
It is very concerning that there was even a debate that they would not have vote anywhere here on our campuses. And I was also very disappointed to find out they didn't do the advanced polling for it. I mean, if the concern was about having too many people in a confined space, why would you only offer one day of it? It's important that this would have had also advanced polling. It could have spread out and dispersed and given social distancing. I was very privileged. So myself and my team, we reached out to Elections Calgary, had conversations. We tried our best to advocate for it. We also promoted on our social media, Instagram, Facebook, advocating for people to stand up for Vote Anywhere. I was also very privileged during this whole process. In the spring, I had numerous high schools that reached out to me, high school teachers of grade 12 classes, and we did Zoom meetings to talk about the municipal election. And I think it really starts with our youth. And whenever I talk to anyone, I say, you know, one of my regrets is that I didn't start this pursuit of being actively involved in my community in a political way sooner. I think that we really need to start this process with our children in school, the first vote they get, the emphasis of doing the research, understanding the policies, the platforms, because it's their future. The future leaders are the ones in our high schools, our universities, our workforce. I have a limited window, 2 terms. These are our leaders, students, union, all of these college graduates. They're our leaders, and we need to advocate for them.
Mr. Wang, you're up next on the question of what you've done up until now and what you would continue to do as mayor to increase the youth vote and ensure on-campus voting becomes the norm for our municipal elections.
Thank you. Campus voting. We all know the only charter rights we have untouchable by any level of government is our democratic rights. Charter rights, section 6. We should all know that. You should know that, you know I know that, I know you know that. Why are we still here? Try to prove right is right. Still, same issue. The spinning issue of every level of government. Now we are here talking about municipal only. The spinning issue. City can't leave any budget for us to do the right thing, long overdue. That is the problem. And now we have a second problem. We do have some really likable, lovable city council. Problem is, he used to end up at 1 versus 14. That is not right. And now, all of a sudden, people believe, and he believes, he can turn a change from a city council to mayor, can suddenly change a 1 versus 14 record to a win. I can't understand that. I hope Council Farkas can answer that for me and for Calgarians. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Farkas, you can pick up that question, or you can just round us out with the final thoughts of the night on this subject. No closing comments. This should have been made clear to you ahead of time. This is your closing comment on the topic of voting on campus.
Thank you. On the topic of voting on campus, I strongly believe that decisions around how the election is run, how the ward boundaries are determined, all of that should have independent oversight. It shouldn't be decided behind closed doors by city councilors who stand to potentially benefit from rules being set up a certain way. So I believe in independent citizen oversight to be able to determine ward boundaries as well as the rules for the election. So to that extent, I believe that the returning officer should be independent, but given adequate funding, adequate resources in order to be able to make sure that the election is fair and accessible to absolutely every single group of Calgarian. Lastly, to conclude, I believe that this election is about change versus more of the same. I believe that I have a proven record of advocating for my constituents, not just when it's been popular, but when it's been really tough to do so. I believe that the question for voters will be, who can you count on? Who can you trust to actually execute on a lot of these things? Many of the candidates will tell you the same things, but we have a proven record behind us. So I'm asking City Council, or rather I'm asking Calgarians to support my vision for Calgary, one that advocates for responsible spending, controlling our budget, advocates to defend rather than defund our police, as well as to be able to address the closed-door meetings at City Hall. So I believe strongly that it is time to get City Hall working for the people again. Change starts now, and October 18th, I am asking for your vote to be your next mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. And that concludes the debate and this forum. I want to say all 3 or all 9 of you kept it really civil, and I was impressed. I tweeted out earlier today that I hope that this forum would be informative and enlightening. I didn't get any hatred or cynicism back, so it was really encouraging, and I think those of you who hung in there at home were well served. So good luck on the 18th, all of you. Thanks again for coming today. I'm going to invite Marley back up here with some closing remarks. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that definitely fulfilled all of my mayoral forum hopes and dreams, so thank you for that. And thank you, Rob, for running such a tight and timely ship. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the candidates for being here tonight. I'd like to extend a big thank you to MacEwan Conference and Events, ProShow, and our team, of course, at the Students' Union for putting this event together. We saw how important it was, we knew how important it was, and went to great lengths to put it on and to put it on safely. So thank you, everyone, for your cooperation with that. We hope to see you again here in person in 4 years. The full stream and video of tonight will be available shortly. I'd also like to take this final moment to encourage everyone to go out and vote on October 18th. I'm also pleased to announce again that as a direct result of student advocacy, that students and the community will have an opportunity to vote here on campus on October 4th and 5th at the University of Calgary. Everyone is welcome to vote here, regardless of what ward you come from, so we are very excited for that opportunity. Wherever you are tonight, we encourage you to get engaged, get informed, and most importantly, get out and vote. Thank you, and have a great night.
you.